Coming to you from the Ultra Staff Studios in Chicago, welcome to the Staffing Buzz Network with your host, Automated Business Designs.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Staffing Buzz Network. My name is Jennifer Michaels, and I'm the producer of the Staffing Buzz Network, an original Ultra Staff Edge podcast. Today, Terri Roeslmeier, President and CEO at Automated Business Designs, will be joining us. In addition to a very special guest, we're actually welcoming back to the Staffing Buzz Network, and that's Crystal Fullilove, Senior Healthcare Staffing Analyst at Staffing Industry Analysts. So we're so excited and thrilled to have Crystal back on. So today's episode is going to be dedicated to healthcare staffing. In part one of today's discussion, Terri and Crystal are going to be talking about the upcoming SIA Healthcare Staffing Summit taking place in November in Arlington, Texas. ABD is proud to be a silver sponsor and exhibitor, so we hope to see you all there. And then the second part of today's discussion is going to be talking about the state of the healthcare staffing and trends that Crystal is seeing. So it's going to be a very relevant and important discussion for healthcare staffing companies and anyone that is interested in getting into the healthcare staffing space. So without further ado, let's bring Terri on, President and CEO at Automated Business Designs. Hi, Terri. How are you?
Hi. Good. Excited about today's session.
Yeah, very excited to have Crystal on today. Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned, it's a pleasure to bring Crystal on. Crystal Fullilove, Senior Healthcare Staffing Analyst at Staffing Industry Analysts. Hi, Crystal.
Hi, Terri. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks so much for having me back. This is very exciting.
Yeah. Back, you're one of the few people that returned back. So, we only have a few guests that return back to back. So happy to have you.
Thank you.
We know you have a lot of experience in the healthcare staffing space. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your background to the audience?
Sure. So I'm Crystal Fullilove, Senior Healthcare Staffing Analyst here at SIA, and my research covers healthcare staffing and workforce solutions broadly. So we cover all four segments across nursing, allied health, locum tenens, advanced practice, and then broader healthcare workforce ecosystem. Prior to joining SIA, I actually worked on the buyer side of the business, managing clinical traveler programs and MSP relationships for large health systems. And I then spent some time on the staffing side, managing large MSP programs and supplier relationships. So that experience has been really helpful for me to give me that buyer-supplier perspective. And in my current role at SIA, I conduct surveys and research and publish reports that help staffing leaders understand where the healthcare staffing market is going and really how they can prepare for the future. Some of that research is also relevant for PE firms and investment bankers, but that's my role in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. You certainly are experienced. And again, we're happy to have you today. And I know I always enjoy hearing you speak at the upcoming conferences and past conferences and webinars. I think just last week or 2 weeks ago, you did a webinar. So It's always so great to hear you and hear what's coming for healthcare.
Oh, thank you. There's a lot happening in healthcare staffing right now.
Yeah. So with that, I will let Terri, you take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, Crystal, we are so happy to have you as an authority in the industry. As Jennifer mentioned, we're really happy to have you back. Last time we did get a lot of positive feedback because your insight is very important and valuable to the industry. So very excited to have you. And we're excited to talk about the Healthcare Staffing Conference that's coming up in Arlington. What are you most excited about?
Well, thanks for asking. It's very exciting for us too. Probably the timing. I think we're not in the dramatic pandemic correction period anymore, and we don't have to focus on that so much presently, which is nice. And the market is more stable, but that doesn't mean that it's becoming easier. So we know that health systems are still dealing with clinician shortages and they're managing very tight budgets, but staffing firms are also dealing with margin pressure and rapidly changing technology. There's more sophisticated MSP and VMS environments, and buyers are expecting more measurable performance. So I think that makes it an ideal time to really bring the industry together. And this year will be, you had mentioned, the Lois Arlington Hotel in Arlington, Texas, from November 9th to the 11th. And I'm really excited just to be in the room with healthcare staffing leaders from all different segments of the industry, as well as broader workforce solutions ecosystem. So it should be a really good event.
Oh, it should. And do you have any special themes this year?
We do. So I would frame this year's agenda really around a new playbook for healthcare staffing. The market has changed significantly. many of the strategies that worked several years ago aren't strategies that will drive growth moving forward. And so I think there's several forces that really intersect this year. Continued financial and margin pressure across healthcare, persistent clinician shortages, and the rapid evolution of technology through AI and staffing platforms. And you'll really see those forces reflected throughout our agenda. And we're looking at the next chapter of travel nursing. We're looking at the growing role of locum tenens, physician search, and advanced practice providers, because we want to make sure we're including them in there. Opportunities in allied health, and then different care settings, not just acute care. We're looking at outpatient care, acute care per diem, which is historically focused on the long-term care industry, healthcare adjacent markets, so school-based healthcare, healthcare IT, and the different models. So we'll talk about MSP, VMS, and staffing platforms and how they're really competing with one another. And then we'll address AI adoption, we'll address compliance and risk, operational performance, and really what it takes for a staffing firm to become a broader workforce partner rather than just a source of talent. And then we also intentionally built different perspectives and formats into the program, which is one thing I'm really excited about. So we have our SIA research and our benchmarking. We also have clinician perspectives, which I love. CEO discussions, we have facilitated peer networking, we have some real world case studies, which should be really engaging. So attendees aren't just hearing what's changing, they're really learning how other leaders are responding and what they can take back to their own business. So excited for the conversations.
Yeah, I know since the first time we attended, it's grown significantly. And we see a lot of clients there. And once a client, what we notice is once a client attends, we're going to see them next year.
Yeah.
And because there's so much to learn, there was so much valuable insight at the conference that it's just very exciting for everyone, I think, to attend. Absolutely. And we enjoy it. And as far as the healthcare executives, what do you think keeps them up at night?
I love that question because I ask that to the executives all the time, so I can better understand what's happening within the market. It really comes down to a difficult equation. So how do we grow? How do we protect profitability when clients are watching their costs more closely? How can clinicians remain, how can we really get them into our database because they're difficult to find? What are the new expectations for speed, for technology and performance, and they keep rising, and how do we manage that? And so there's, a number of data sources out there on hospital financial situations that really illustrate the challenge. Median hospital operating margins being one of them, really only averaging 2.7% in 2025. And that varies month to month and by facility to facility. But that really means that staffing firms have one client who's cautiously investing, and they may have several others who are aggressively reducing cost. So I think those underlying workforce shortages is really still an issue. And so the summit is really designed around that tension, cost versus access, speed versus compliance, and growth versus margin discipline.
Yeah, and for your executives that are going to attend one conference this year, why should it be this one?
Well, hopefully they held out for this one. So this event is really entirely focused on the business of healthcare staffing. So if you're in the business of healthcare staffing, this is a conference you should attend. It's for the broader staffing events and technology events, but the Healthcare Staffing Summit are conversations that are specific to the decisions that healthcare leaders are making every day, not just in terms of segments like travel nursing, allied health, but also the MSPs, the VMS, your compliance, your platforms, your AI, your margins, changing health system expectations. And I think the other differentiator is the combination of SIA research along with the practitioners who are actually operating in the market. So you get the data, but you also get the discussion around what the data means operationally.
And are there new formats or topics that are going to be introduced this year?
Yes, so we try to ensure that it's relevant and updated from year to year. And this year's agenda is really designed to be very practical and closely tied to the issues healthcare staffing leaders are navigating right now, many of which we already discussed. But I think attendees can expect a mix of traditional panels, some SIA research and benchmarking, clinician and executive perspectives, different topics for facilitated peer discussions, real world case studies, which we haven't done in the past, focused on how firms are actually responding to market changes. And then we also have some TED Talk style executive perspectives and sessions that are built around concrete operating strategies rather than just high level trends. So topic-wise, we're covering a broad range of growth and transformation areas. Again, several of them I mentioned, but we have a couple new ones, one of which is building an AI-ready healthcare staffing firm. We have allied health beyond the hospital, acute care per diem, but focused on the acute care setting, not the long-term care industry, healthcare IT staffing, regulatory risk, investment strategy, which I'm particularly excited about, buyer expectations. So I think really the goal is just for executives to leave with a better understanding of where the market's going, but with benchmarks and strategies that they can take back and that they can apply within their own firms.
Well, it's nice as you do all the research and the groundwork, and they can, simply just come and consume all that information.
Exactly.
All laid out for them. So that's good because, really, there's so much information out there, and to sort through it and actually research and get the type of information that they can receive by going to a conference such as that is just wonderful. Wonderful to have something like that to go to.
Absolutely.
Good. Now, which sessions do you think are going to generate the most discussion?
MSP VMS discussion always generates a lot of conversation, really because those programs influence such a significant share of healthcare staffing business. So that's one. I think the sessions will really get into what providers actually look for in the suppliers and the performance metrics that matter, which will help that vendor relationship. I also mentioned being excited about investment strategy. I think that will draw in a lot of interest. We're in a more selective investment environment, so the conversation shifted beyond just growth. And staffing executives really want to understand what their strategic and private equity buyers value today. So we're going to dive into EBITDA and growth profile, to specialization, to client diversification, and what makes a healthcare staffing company attractive in this market. So I will be sitting in on that session, very excited. And I would add AI and buyer expectations. And we know that AI is moving from experimentation to implementation. So leaders are continuing to ask much more practical questions about how they can scale it across different workflows in recruiting and credentialing and scheduling. And we know health systems are also expecting staffing firms to provide those broader workforce solutions and measurable value. So those are two conversations that really get at how healthcare staffing firms need to operate and then how they can differentiate themselves going forward.
Wow. Yeah, very exciting. And AI certainly is in the news today.
Yes, it is.
A lot going on with AI. As far as the conversation around AI, what is different this year regarding AI conversations from last year?
Yeah, it's really moved from what can we do with AI to how do we operationalize it? How do we scale it? How do we get real value from it? And last year, much of the discussion was around individual tools. And now we're talking much more about how AI becomes embedded into the actual workflows of a staffing business. And I know Terri mentioned some webinars, and that's been a hot topic for a lot of our webinars. And I think that distinction actually matters because adoption is still relatively early. And we have a lot of research, particularly on digital workers, that finds that many of these organizations actually remain in pilot or limited deployment stages, and that the bigger obstacles to scaling aren't necessarily the AI models themselves. They're the integration and the orchestration and the change management and the governance. We're also seeing the conversation move toward agents and more connected workflows. So that can mean that AI doesn't just draft emails anymore or summarize resumes, which is incredibly helpful, but it's sourcing, it's screening candidates, it's updating the CRM, it's triggering follow-ups. And so I think the healthcare staffing just adds another dimension between the tolerance for error, which is really low in this market. And that's another area that our research emphasizes where that competitive advantage can come into play in connecting that AI to the high quality data and those well-designed workflows, and having those clearly defined escalation paths and human oversight. So that conversation will be less about replacing people, and it will be more about redesigning work and what should AI do and what should people do. Where's the human judgment absolutely necessary to remain? And that also should be a really good conversation.
Yeah, I like that term that you use, redesigning the workflow.
Yeah.
Because you have your tools, but you really have to figure out how it's going to fit into your environment.
Exactly.
And you really don't want to lose the human touch. So it's more meant to keep track of and actually take care of some of those mundane tasks that people will do, leaving you more time to spend with your clients and your candidates, and really focus on more of those human intervention items.
Yep. High value areas. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I love that. Love that. Now, I read your publications, attend some of the webinars, a lot of fantastic information. I would say it's probably the best information in the healthcare industry that I have seen in comparing different publications. It's very detailed, it's very true, very good. And I'm sure others watching this are also, followers of staffing industry and what you do for the industry. And we've been working with you for a long time. Long time from, many, many years when we first attended our very first conference and worked with Hugo.
Yes.
So we're very familiar. But besides the webinars and the publications, what does an in-person event have to offer in addition to complement the things that we look at? Why should we go to an in-person event? Isn't that another piece that we can add on to actually enrich our knowledge and networking?
Yeah, I like that you said complement, because I think that's exactly what it does too. I think the research tells you what's happening, but being in the room helps you understand how leaders are responding to it. And you get to hear where executives agree, where they disagree, what buyers actually expect, what competitors are trying, what's working operationally. I think some of the most valuable conversations happen after the sessions, when someone hears a data point and they turn to another executive and they're like, oh my gosh, we're seeing exactly the same thing. What have you guys been doing about it? And I think that peer exchange is very difficult to replicate virtually.
Yeah, especially since people come from all different areas of the country. And I think a lot of times people are more apt to share, and find out what's happening in other parts of the country. And a lot of our clients do national placements, so they're in every state. Yes. But it's just interesting to see different perspectives and from different sizes, because you have anywhere from a smaller to a larger company attending.
Yeah, it's like a safe room, right? Like there's no recording, there's no virtual note taker. You're just having a very real conversation. And I think you're more comfortable sharing some deeper insights.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know you have a lot of networking events. What's a must-attend event or multiple events? What should they attend?
I always recommend that people be intentional about networking rather than collecting business cards. And I think you should use roundtables and interactive sessions to find people facing the same challenges that you are, whether that's MSP performance or your credentialing speed or your AI implementation, or even just margin pressure, which is pretty much going to be across the board. I think you should also talk to people outside of your segment. A travel nursing executive may actually learn something from a locums firm about pricing discipline. So that's one that I would underscore. An allied firm may learn something from a per diem platform about clinician engagement. And so those cross-segment conversations can be extremely valuable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We see that in our user meetings, where people get together. They're all using the same software so they can exchange ideas, how they're using it, et cetera. So there's certainly a lot of benefit to that.
Yeah.
Now, what types of healthcare staffing firms would benefit most from attending?
I think all firms across the healthcare staffing ecosystem. Travel nursing firms are navigating a stabilizing market, but it remains highly competitive. Allieds returning to modest growth, locum tenens and advanced practice is continuing to expand. Per diems really undergoing some significant change. Physician search is included in the conversation this year. It's really evolving. So is workforce technology and solutions providers. So I think the common denominator is really that every firm is being asked to deliver more measurable value to the buyer.
Yeah, we see a surge in physician as well. So
yes,
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that. Yeah. Any advice to first-time attendees?
Yes. Come with 3 business questions that you want answered. Don't try to attend everything. Identify the sessions that are most relevant to those questions, and then divide and conquer amongst your team. Use your networking time to speak with people who have solved the problem that you're working on. And these sessions are recorded, so attendees can actually go back and watch the sessions on demand for 90 days post-event. So that shouldn't be a stressor. And don't only network with the people you already know, like I mentioned before. Some of the greatest value really does come from meeting an executive from a different segment or a different sized firm and realizing that they may actually be approaching the same challenge, but in a completely different way.
Oh, that's a fantastic advice. Don't stick with just the people that you know. I think a lot of times we tend to do that when we attend things, and just to try to get yourself out there, meet new people. And again, it's all about the different perspectives. And,
Absolutely.
Everybody should take something away from it, and the 3 questions that you want answered is a fantastic idea as well. So great advice. Great advice. Now, one last question about the conference. What do you hope that attendees take away from the Staffing Healthcare Conference this year?
Clarity. I want executives to leave with a clearer understanding of where this market is going, where the opportunities are for them to invest in, where the risks are, and really what the capabilities they'll need are to compete over the next several years. So ideally, everyone goes home with 2 or 3 decisions that they can act on, not just 50 pages of notes.
Yeah. And if you narrow it down that way, you're more apt to actually accomplish it. If you come back with a list of 20 pages, but 3 major things usually seems to work. So that's great advice. And I'd love to get your information or your thoughts on the healthcare industry in general. What trends can we see? So I hope you don't mind if I ask you a couple questions about that.
Sure, no problem.
So how would you describe the state of healthcare staffing in 2026?
Stabilizing, but uneven. So as many of you know, we published our staffing industry forecast report twice annually. So our most recent forecast report was in March of this year, and we projected the U.S. healthcare temporary staffing market reached about $38.7 billion, or will this year. And that is projected to be up about 1% from the $38.5 billion last year. We also projected approximately $39.6 billion next year, which is about 2% growth. But that headline number hides some very different segment stories, right? We know that travel nursing is projected to be essentially flat in 2026, which flat is the new normal. That's still great from several years of contraction. Per diem nursing is projected to decline 7%. Allied health is projected to grow 1%. Locum tenens and advanced practice is actually the strongest major segment, projected to grow about 5%. So it's not a broad-based boom. It's a market where strategy and segment selection actually matter much more.
So you have to be really strong planners. And taking advantage of really, the knowledge and the different tools that we have available today to compete. Very interesting. Now, margin pressure continues to be a challenge. So what would you say that successful firms are doing differently?
I think they're managing the business more scientifically. And that really just means understanding profitability at the client level, at the segment level, at the specialty level, and even at an assignment level. So they're more focused on recruiter productivity, on redeployment, on assignment completion. And that includes ensuring that credentialing is efficient and that your fill rate and your client retention rates are good. So they're not looking at it just from a revenue perspective. And they're also becoming more selective about where they compete. So in travel nursing, for example, there are some firms who have seen margins normalize substantially from pre-pandemic levels, which is wonderful, while some shorter assignments can increase that onboarding and credentialing costs. So I think the winning strategy isn't necessarily do more. In this market, it's how can we just do the right business better? And I think that's where they're at.
Do you see a lot of direct hire in healthcare staffing?
There is a component of direct hire there. That's actually tracked separately. We have a different analyst who tracks that. That's more on the buyer side of the SIA membership. So it's council membership. I work on the corporate membership, which is staffing firm, but there's absolutely a direct hire aspect to it. There's also conversions, right? Like temp to hire. So we are seeing buyers looking for more direct hire because it just makes sense for them to have a permanent employee as opposed to a temporary employee that they have to look to replace every 13 weeks or 26 weeks or whatever it might be. So that is increasing too. There's just a different complexity involved with that.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. As far as staffing firms, technology, automation, profitability, how do those things play together?
Yeah, so we're seeing technology really attack some of the most expensive friction points in staffing: the sourcing, the matching, the credentialing, which is, I keep emphasizing because in healthcare staffing, it's extremely complex, communication, scheduling, and redeployment. And so automated credentialing can actually reduce manual work, and it prevents those compliance problems. You have AI assisted matching. It can improve submission speed. You have mobile technology, which really lets those clinicians manage their credentials, their assignment, their communication without requiring as much recruiter intervention, although they're still needed. And then integration matters. So healthcare staffing systems are more frequently connecting ATS and VMS with credentialing and scheduling and timekeeping and payroll, so that information doesn't have to be re-entered manually. And so the biggest opportunity isn't replacing recruiters, and we touched on that too. It's really allowing recruiters and operational teams to spend more time on the work that actually requires human judgment and relationships.
So with a mobile app, for example, instead of the nurse calling and finding out what time should I start, where should I go, they can look on their mobile app, and recruiters can focus more on QC and quality control.
Exactly.
So it helps a lot rather than those miscellaneous things that could be accessed much quicker and easier too, because they can just log in, look at it, and and they like that. Well, we find that there is a popular trend toward the mobile app.
Yes.
Even the nurses, which in the healthcare industry generally they're not as computer literate as some other industries, but everybody has a phone, everybody uses a mobile app, so it makes it much easier to do things or to perform tasks that the staffing firm might need, even from a collection of time. So
or after hours, right? Like when they get off their shift and it's 11 p.m. and they're just lounging on their couch and they're trying to find their next shift, and it's just on their own time and they don't have to wait for anybody. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. No, very good. All right, this is a really interesting question because it's so popular. What is changing in the MSP and the VMS environment? What does that landscape look like?
Yeah, so they're no longer just procurement channels. They're really performance environments. And so large health systems expect visibility into fill rates and candidate status and the cost and the compliance. And so staffing firms are being evaluated on their speed, on their accuracy, on their assignment completion, on their operational reliability. And because the majority of spend in travel nursing and allied, to a lesser degree locum tenens, flow through MSP or VMS programs, succeeding really means be very good. You have to be very good at operating inside of those systems.
And technology tools, align also with that. And reporting, different types of reporting, data analytics, of course.
Absolutely.
So whatever you can offer your clients in that realm is a plus.
For sure.
We're going to work in that environment. Okay, great. So how are healthcare organizations thinking differently about contingent labor than they were 5 years ago?
Yeah, 5 years ago, particularly during the pandemic, the question was really, how quickly can you get me somebody? And today it's much more sophisticated, right? It's how can you help me manage my workforce? And health systems are building internal float pools and internal travel programs, which isn't new. That's been around for quite some time, but they're combining permanent and contingent strategies. And you had mentioned direct hire. And they're asking staffing partners for supply intelligence, for forecasting, for workforce analytics, broader total talent solutions. You just touched on that too. Yeah. And so that's a fundamental shift from transactional staffing toward workforce partnership.
Everyone's getting more sophisticated. So reporting has to be more sophisticated. I actually just had a meeting yesterday with our client and their client. And it was all about reporting and analytics and what they can get in terms of data. And everybody wants to slice and dice today, where the traditional reporting model is pretty much out of style. No one actually prints a report. They want to see the analytics, and they want to see more of a graphical nature, so that you can kind of see what's happening immediately and actually look on your screen and find out what's going on, without having to run a long report and laboriously kind of go through that. So
where's your dashboard of all the different metrics you like to track regularly to understand what's happening in real time? I agree.
Yeah, all new. And on your phone too. All that's available on your phone. So everyone's on the go.
Yes.
So good. Now, what about regulatory reimbursement policies? what should leaders watch on some of those topics?
I think there's several things, and this is an area where firms need to remain very alert because policy moves very quickly. Fortunately for us, we have Tim Shuhai, who's our in-house attorney, and he publishes quarterly legal updates, and he makes sure that we're all informed on the latest changes and what the impact is for staffing industries across the board. But for healthcare staffing in particular, immigration is particularly important for international nurse staffing. So within our forecast report that I touched on, we projected an 8% decline in international nurse staffing for this year. That was largely driven by visa availability and processing constraints rather than there just being a lack of demand. And then we're also seeing reimbursement pressure, which is also critical because it affects the buyer's ability to really absorb those labor costs, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then we talked about AI becoming embedded in recruiting and screening and credentialing. So, staffing firms also need to pay close attention to employment law, to privacy bias, to compliance, to appropriate human oversight. And I think that's why legal and regulatory issues are part of the conversations that we built into the Healthcare Staffing Summit agenda.
And having the correct documentation.
Yes, absolutely.
On hand, correct signatures and having everything, available and following. There's a lot of information. I see a lot from staffing industry that comes in regarding, because the legal landscape changes so suddenly. One day, there's a certain procedure and then the next day it completely changes.
Yes,
and so you got to keep on top of those things, right?
For sure.
So what role do advanced practice providers and physicians play in the future?
Yeah, they're an important component to touch on. I think a large one. There's a lot of government data out there, one of which you can look at HRSA that projects a shortage of more than 141,000 full-time equivalent physicians by 2038. And then there's some specialties in some rural markets that are particularly constrained. And we break that down in several of our healthcare reports. But health systems are responding with a combination of permanent physician recruiting, locum tenens, and increased use of advanced practice providers. And that's one reason locums and advanced practice is the strongest growing major healthcare staffing segment in our current forecast, because the future is really about designing the right physician plus APP workforce model rather than just viewing each category independently. So that will be a big conversation at the summit.
Wow. Oh, that's very interesting. And that's new, fairly new.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think we didn't talk about it as much. It was like happening in the background, but it wasn't discussed as much as it should. And now that these physicians are retiring, the landscape's changing. It's really coming to light. And it's a big part of the conversation now.
Coming to the forefront.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, great. And that changes recruiting as well.
Absolutely.
So, great. Now, how is outpatient, ambulatory, and home-based care affecting staffing? We got a lot of boomers, getting older and a lot going on there. So what's your perspective on that?
Yeah, historically, we haven't broken it down into those categories too far beyond just looking at it at a broad level, acute care versus nursing and residential and ambulatory care. But I just published a recent report that took a deep dive into this, and that was very exciting and insightful. And it's really changing the geography of demand. So just at a high level, between 2015 and 2025, ambulatory healthcare actually increased 32%. Hospitals only increased 16%. So these also aren't low acuity clinic jobs. These are orthopedics. This is oncology. This is cardiovascular procedures. This is interventional radiology. These are all being delivered in outpatient settings. And that creates demand for a number of roles, not just on the physician side, but it could be like peri-op nurses, PACU nurses, anesthesia support, your sterile processing. And so I think the question becomes, are you following the patient and therefore the workforce demand beyond the hospital walls, which is an important component of it?
Oh, absolutely. And what I love about breaking those up into different statistics is if someone is knowledgeable about that, they can plan better for their business and maybe even switch gears from one to another, or actually switch their marketing focus on it. So, very interesting. And those stats are very important to know so that you know where the industry is going, because you can't really see it by working in the environment. You have to actually peel back the covers and kind of see what's actually going on with those percentages, because you wouldn't have that information just from your own business. You need to broaden that scope and get those stats across the board. And And it changes nationally too. Are there different areas that, or is it that just kind of an average all across?
It definitely differs, just like operating margin does by hospital to hospital. There are different geographical regions that are doing better. Rural is always one that has a lesser operating margin than their metropolitan facilities do. There's definitely different challenges. And we do call out in our reports which states have the fastest growing employment for a number of specialties and occupations. And you will see that differ by geography, by rural and urban facilities, depending upon what sort of legislation and regulation is being enforced in those states. So there's a number of different dynamics, and that is, to your very good point, you have to peel back the layers and you have to do a little bit of research to understand what the different dynamics are, what the facility characteristics are, what the ownership characteristics are of different facilities, and what challenges or different models that they even have and partnerships that they have that really help you understand where you may be valuable to specific buyers.
Yeah, and breaking it down by state is important too, because if I'm working in a certain state and or states, or thinking of maybe opening or going into a new state, knowing what's going on in that state is very, very important. So I can plan or decide or make better business decisions on if I'm going to actually embark upon that environment. Can I handle that particular environment? So all good information, really, really good. Now, what are the biggest workforce challenges over the next decade?
Supply, demographics, and distribution. And you had touched on this earlier too, about an aging patient population and its increasing healthcare utilization at the same time that many experienced clinicians are also approaching retirement. Then you add in nurse and physician shortages and allied health shortages and geographic maldistribution. So, the long-term workforce challenge isn't just recruiting harder. We need to think about education capacity and technology and productivity, those new care models, the APP utilization, and how clinicians experience work.
Yeah, no, all very important. And to see, where the graduates are going, are the what portion of healthcare staffing or just healthcare in general interests them. So that'll really depend on what is available in terms of employees for that particular segment, within the industry. So
and it's nice to see more staffing firms partnering with academic institutions too, so we can really catch them before they graduate and figure out where their placement could be, so they can, serve the most in need facilities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's helpful for them too, because they want to have a growth position. Yeah. Something that is, really in demand. And, so all the way around, I think it's good for everyone.
For sure.
So, great. Well, I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to ask you one last question here. Okay. It's a big question, though, and, really appreciate your perspective since you're so knowledgeable about so many different areas. What will healthcare staffing look like 5 years from now?
I think this is such a funny question because then someone's going to record it and then 5 years later, they're going to be like, that is not what you predicted. I think it's going to be more integrated, more technology enabled, and more outcome driven, in addition to being more specialized. So I think the boundaries between temporary staffing, per diem, locums, perm placement, internal talent pools, platforms, workforce consulting, it's all going to continue to blur. And I think recruiters will still matter tremendously, but they'll be supported much more by automation. And I think buyers will expect staffing firms to integrate into their technology ecosystem and to contribute data and insight to their workforce planning. And I think that successful firms will be measured less by how many orders they receive and more by the outcomes that they can create, by their fill, by their speed, by their cost, and ultimately their continuity of patient care.
Yeah, it's all about the end game, isn't it? Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, Crystal, it has been wonderful having you. We really appreciate, that you're spreading so much insight. I'm sure that our viewers are very happy to learn about the conference and to learn about your insights on the industry. And so we really appreciate you joining us today. And what we're going to do is we're going to just talk a little bit more about when this conference is taking place.
Yes. All right.
Okay. So Healthcare Staffing Summit, November 9th through 11th, 2026. It is going to be in Arlington, Texas. There's a QR code on the screen. So for those watching, you can register and log in right there. Just click on the QR code. But we're going to be there. We're very excited about being there. And there are so many people going to be there. And I remember when we first started going to the conference, it's grown significantly since then. And now we actually sign up right away because it's getting full.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you want to reach Crystal, or if you want to go to the website, Jennifer, do you want to? Yes. Okay, there we are. So if you want to connect with Crystal, here's a QR code for Crystal. I'm sure if you have any questions for her, she'd be happy to answer. And of course, Staffing Industry on the SIA website, there's a QR code for that. Crystal, any final words? And I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer now.
No, well, thank you again for having me back. This is very exciting. I feel like we should make this an annual tradition. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast and chatting with you guys and just spreading some good insight into what's happening and letting folks, making them aware of a conference that could really add some value to their business. So I appreciate the opportunity and the conversation.
Oh, thank you. You're a very popular guest. Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, well, thank you both very much for that discussion. It's very insightful and I enjoyed it. And again, always good to have you on, Crystal. I agree. We should make it an annual tradition.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Healthcare conference. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have one final question for both of you. A fun question, but it's an important one as well for the audience. Okay. So it's August. I hear pumpkin spice lattes are already going to make their debut this month at some coffee shops. When do you think is the right time to begin putting out fall decorations, having pumpkin spice lattes? Is August too soon? What do you think, Crystal?
That's a hilarious question, but when you actually think about it, I think it's great from a marketing perspective too. And also, I think it might help us transition better, having a little bit of that gap in between the different seasons where you feel like maybe it comes out a little bit too soon, but then you have some enjoyment of that like delicious pumpkin spice in the summer and it just kind of lingers into the fall. So you like slowly transition into different seasons and maybe it's helpful mentally, for you to prepare and have something delicious at the same time. So I'm always thrilled when it comes out. I'm perfectly fine with it coming out in August.
You'll be one of the first in line.
Yeah, exactly.
What about you, Terri? Too soon for you or?
Well, being in Chicago, I'm trying to hold on to the warm weather as soon as possible. So I don't really want to think about the cold air coming in. So I'm not a big fan of it, but I do agree with Crystal. It is a nice transition so that we can kind of, slowly transition into the fall and then into the winter months. And Crystal, I know you're from the East Coast, so you're in the same boat as Chicago, where we're going to go through a long, hard winter.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for answering the question. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and again, thank you both for being on. I really appreciate it and hope you both have a good rest of your day. We'll see you next time.
You as well. Thanks so much.
See you at the conference.
Well, there you have it. So as we close out here, just a reminder again of who we are. We're Automated Business Designs, the host of the Staffing Buzz Network, and we're a proud silver sponsor of the upcoming SIA Healthcare Staffing Summit. We'll be exhibiting there, so we hope to see you there. And then we provide the staff recruiting software solution, UltraStaff Edge, full front, middle, back office solution with some pretty incredible AI tools. And we have some special healthcare practices and tools as well. Some of the things that we're talking about today we have. So if you're interested in learning more, we invite you to reach out and see the tools in action. We'd love to see how we can help you. But with that, we thank you all for tuning in for today's episode, and we hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.